You didn't know this about the terrifying cyclone of Myanmar. Natural disaster, Nargis Cyclone 2008. Did you know there are terrifying stories about the 2008 Nargis Cyclone in Myanmar? Learn the truth about this frightening natural disaster, from the tremendous strength it possessed to the tragic consequences it left in its wake. How did the locals deal with it? What were the takeaways? Now is the time to reveal the truth about the Nargis Cyclone. It has been years since the Nargis Cyclone made landfall in Myanmar on May 2, 2008, bringing with it rain and gusts strong enough to topple enormous trees, dislodge buildings, and cause tidal surges that swamped a significant portion of the country. It was a catastrophe on the scale of the Asian tsunami that occurred in 2004 and resulted in the deaths of 140,000 people. Information that was coming from Yangon gradually began to reveal the severity of the storm, with homelessness, water shortages, and sharply increasing food prices affecting almost half the country's population. This was a population that was already impoverished and vulnerable after years of economic and political instability in the country. Everyone is aware of the anecdote about how reluctant the government was to accept any form of international assistance and how slowly they responded to the tremendous disaster that had occurred. And even 2 years after the storm, there were still significant portions of the country that had not been helped by the approximately 60 international development organizations that had been officially allowed to work in Myanmar. And the issues that had been caused by the storm were still very serious, particularly in regards to food, livelihood, and housing. In a lot of different ways, Cyclone Nargis was the catalyst for all kinds of changes and opened up new opportunities for growth in an extremely challenging country. Because the catastrophe was so severe, and because it struck such a large portion of the nation, the governing authorities of the country were unable to respond adequately and were ultimately forced to allow international organizations to enter the country and provide assistance, albeit in a delayed and resistant manner. But in the weeks before the United Nations and other aid organizations were allowed in, the most significant source of assistance and support for the victims of the cyclone came from the committed groups of Burmese people themselves, as well as from monks and the networks of local Buddhist temples located all over the country. These monks provided shelter to people who'd lost their homes, helped provide whatever food and health assistance they could, and organized cremation ceremonies for the deceased. Following the devastation caused by Nargis, these community organizations have remained engaged in the relief and recovery efforts. The majority of non-governmental organizations operating in Myanmar or working on Myanmar from outside the nation have, for an extended period of time, prioritized concerns pertaining to human rights. Many of these organizations, which had been engaged in the difficult politics of struggle with the military administration for such a significant amount of time, were forced to shift gears in order to respond to the new set of needs that were created as a result of the storm. The majority of the rebuilding that took place in the aftermath of the cyclone adhered to the traditional model of assistance that is associated with natural disasters. This involved the construction of identical homes in long, uninterrupted rows. But many townships rebuilt the villages on their own, and as a result of this procedure, they gained such a boost in self-assurance that they went on to accomplish a great deal more. The programs that were implemented in these 3 severely damaged regions worked within the existing structures of the villages to empower the afflicted people to take the lead role in the planning and execution of their own post-disaster rehabilitation. The effort consisted of establishing community-saving clubs and using the collaborative rebuilding of houses as a means of motivating community members to collaborate on addressing a wide variety of needs. When the cyclone repair was complete, the procedure went to downtown Yangon, where there were a great number of room squatters and low-income tenants who had no solution at all. Everything in Myanmar is moving at a breakneck pace right now, and there is a significant amount of dynamism in the environment. The most important question that needs to be answered right now is how to take advantage of the great amount of energy and creativity that the people possess in order to mainstream the community-driven approach from the very beginning of this new era in the history of Myanmar.